All right, good morning. I think we're going to get started now. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're really excited about this new project, and we're really excited that so many folks are interested in this piece of work. My name is Rebecca Shore. I'm the director of the Systems for Student Success Office at the Department of Ed. Specifically, I work within the statewide system of support, supporting some of the districts that are serving schools that need targeted or focused or broad comprehensive support. I'm also joined today by two of my colleagues at the department, Andrea Ricotta and Susan Fisher. And we're joined by our partners from the Rennie Center and Boston College, who we will introduce very shortly. I hope everybody is doing very well this morning. Hopefully most people are muted. If not, sometimes we hear your inside business, so we'll just give you a quick shout out if we realize that there's any muting problems during the session. But if you have questions, there is a chat box that you should see to the right side of your screen, and feel free to type in questions at any point, and we'll be sure to address them. If not in that moment, then definitely by the end of the presentation. Great. So just quickly in terms of the content that we're going to cover today, we'll start off with giving you a little bit of background about what is the genesis of this project and the Systemic Student Support, or as we're calling S3 Academy, and give you a little bit more information about the overview about what it entails. Then we'll dig into some of the key dates and activities that you should be anticipating if you apply for and are accepted into the Academy. We'll give you more information about the district and school team expectations about who should be participating in the group. And then we'll dig into what you can expect to be doing as part of the content of this work in terms of how we're thinking about self-assessing against these systemic student support indicators and doing some implementation planning to strengthen your own system. Then we'll move into a little bit more information about what the application actually entails. And finally, we'll wrap up with a few points of clarification based on some questions we've already received and address any additional questions that come up during the session. So I hope that sounds good. If not, let us know, write in on the side, and we're happy to adapt based on whatever you need. So just stepping back briefly here for a moment, why are we all signed on this morning? And I think none of this is going to be a big surprise to folks on this webinar. But as we all know, students have increasingly faced a range of different types of academic, behavioral, and social, emotional, or wellness-related opportunity and achievement barriers, some of which are in school and some of which are completely out of school related. And as a result of those factors, in order for schools to be most successful, we know that we need to build much stronger systems and build capacity to develop, secure, and coordinate supports that not only build upon students' and families' strengths, but also help address those barriers to learning that we mentioned in the bullet beforehand. So, historically, we've known that that was the right thing to do, right? We know that it is sort of the ethically responsible thing to do to really look at who we are serving in terms of students and families and be adaptive to addressing what some of their challenges are and helping to bolster their strengths. But we have an increasing amount of research that says that it's not only the right thing to do, it's actually really a necessary thing to do in order to support school and district achievement. So we have a range of different research studies that are all supportive of that, not only nationally, but also within the state of Massachusetts. And that shows us that if we really do an effective job of closing some of these opportunity gaps by providing students the supports that they need and are aligned with academic instruction, that those students can thrive academically, both within their K-12 experience, but also in college and career. We've seen this in research that we've done on our turnaround schools. We've also seen it through a study that we did on an initiative called Wraparound Zones that showed that there was statistically significant gains when we take this holistic approach and really meet students' holistic needs. And then we also have it from various organizations and models, from the City Connects model, which is a model that one of our partners helped or led the work around developing, and other models across the nation. So in response to this, we had the opportunity to develop this new academy, and we wanted to give you a little bit more context in terms of how it sits within the agency's priorities. So many of you may know that we previously had 4 core strategies. They were related to strengthening standards, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. We had one around promoting educator development, a third around turning around the lowest performing districts and schools, and finally we had one around enhancing resource allocation and data use. But then a number of years ago, the department decided to add a 5th core strategy, which we affectionately refer to as the HEART strategy. And that one is specifically around supporting the social emotional learning, health, and safety of our students and families. So this project is actually one of a portfolio of options that the department has developed in support of this particular strategy. It obviously touches upon some of the others, but the HEART strategy is sort of at the core. And it marks as a collaboration not only within the statewide system of support or the turnaround office, but also the Office of Student and Family Support, among other groups. In addition, we think it's really helpful to ground this work within the Safe and Supportive Schools Commission. For those of you who aren't familiar, the commission was created out of an act relative to the reduction of gun violence in 2014. And part of their charge was to help really define a framework for what a safe and supportive schools looks like, develop a self-assessment around that, and they've been producing a range of different types of support, guidance around the effective principles of integrated student support, as well as grant initiatives. And so out of that work, this past year, there was a line item in the state budget to be able to create something such as an academy like this one that would be used to leverage pre-existing investments and establish an infrastructure to facilitate the coordination of school and community-based resources, including but not limited to social services, youth development, health and mental health services, et cetera. So using that budget item, we collaborated to put out a request for proposals on organizations that could really help us get those principles off the ground and support schools and districts in improving their student support systems. We used a model that we've used for several other topics before. Some of you may be familiar that we have a range of MTSS academies. We've got one for PBIS, literacy, tiered math, and inclusive tier 1 instruction. And it provides schools and districts with multiple years of support around really unpacking that particular topic and figuring out the right planning and implementation needed to bolster their practices in that area. And so we're sort of mirroring that model in this particular academy, which we found to be really useful. And then finally, this work builds off of the tremendous work of the 2 partners that we wound up choosing. They came together as a partnership in their proposal, and it was really sort of a marriage made in heaven in terms of this topic. Many of you probably know the Rennie Center for their work in a range of different areas, but essentially, their work combines research with on-the-ground initiatives to improve public education through well-informed decision-making based on deep knowledge and evidence of effective policy-making and practice. So they have a lot of experience with developing networks and helping districts around continuous improvement process planning. And then they decided to team up with Boston College's Center for Optimized Student Support. If many of you may know them from their City Connects work, although they've been doing research on this for a long time. So they bring decades of experience investigating how whole child approaches that integrate student supports can improve outcomes. And their center focuses on 3 areas: rigorous interdisciplinary research, direct implementation, and scaled policy and practice. So these ideas were tested and refined through the implementation of City Connects, which is a specific model of integrated student support that's currently in 100 schools in 5 states. So joining us from the Rennie Center today, we have Juanita Zerta, who is the Chief Program Officer. And Juanita leads the planning and development of programs at the Rennie Center, focusing on outcomes management and embedding continuous improvement practices into all implementation efforts. Her multidisciplinary experience includes working in housing and community development, health and human services, and workforce training and education fields. And then speaking on behalf of Boston College today, we've got Pat DiNatale, who is a 26-year veteran leader from Boston Public Schools and has been working with over 100 schools and a dozen districts to implement integrated student support through the City Connects program out of BC. And so we are really thrilled to be collaborating with them on this project. And without further ado, I think I'm going to hand it over to Juanita.
Thank you so much, Becca. I am, the Rennie Center is very excited to be part of this project. As you mentioned, we've been, delving our practice into network development. How can we all learn from each other, and how can we scale, best practices and implementation when joining our efforts? So this is a great part of the work that we're interested in, and obviously all of the work that we've done on social emotional learning and some of the networks we run on that side, and realizing that really supporting children to be successful can only happen when you put many pieces together and do it in a multifaceted way and in a very individualized manner. So we're very excited with this project. I am going to walk everyone through some of the goals, outcomes, and some of the more procedural parts of the application. Again, questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And oh my goodness, this is always technology. Sorry about that. And I will give it to our friends in BC to talk a little bit more about some of the key components of this initiative. So again, goals and outcomes. We hope that with this process, district participants and school participants will really have a better understanding of what it takes to provide effective student support, systemic student support. We will go through some of the best practices, some of the theory around this. We will also go through this process, through this year, we will guide districts through a self-assessment process and thinking about, individuals thinking about what are some of the key practices that they're currently having around, and services around student supports, leading into ideally developing an implementation plan to strengthen their student support services, establish good measurable outcomes. We will play emphasis into making sure that this plan is truly integrating into other existing plans and not a standalone. Like if we work this into the, the skin and the body of all the work we do is better than if it is a standalone program. So integrating to 7 supported school plans, district improvement plans would be important and something that we will be highlighting. And finally, the power of the network, right? There's only so much that we can bring to this and expertise that we can bring that can only be strengthened by what is already proven to work or not work, which we're hoping that everybody can share and feel that there's this trust and community where we can all see what we tried and what have been some of the successes and roadblocks. So that is what we're hoping that this project would yield. In terms of the key activities, there's going to be 3 full-day workshops facilitated by Rennie Center and Boston College's Center for Optimized Support Services at the Boston College. We will have 2 virtual convenings to really help you more get through the self-assessment and the planning process. And we will have some ongoing targeted support and technical assistance through the schools and districts to help all of you go through this process. I'm going to go through the calendar in a second. So the eligible participants. So you will have probably already in the application that the eligible participants are district teams of 3 or 4 schools serving grades K to 8. This is elementary, alone schools, elementary or middle, or middle. We do request that you will send at least one school serving elementary students. So please no all 3 or 4 middle schools. We know that we need to be flexible, and that there might be some small districts that might propose working only with 2 schools, and we're open to that. We want to try to review all the applications in a holistic manner and understand everybody's needs, and some of hopefully this is not going to create an undue burden to your day activities. And one thing is that we truly are we're giving priority to districts that are serving students with really broad, comprehensive, or very targeted focused support. So we're really need for this service is going to also be closely examined. Quick timeline. Applications due the 26th. We're going to review them, and on the week of November 1st, we're going to do follow-up calls if needed with applicants, if there's something that we didn't understand very well from the application, or some ideas we want to bounce by you. So not everyone is going to get a call, but it's something that we want to open up, because it's better sometimes to have conversations than just read documents. Then week November 13, we will be selecting participants and notifying, and quickly kicking off this work with December 12th. Meeting is more than tentative, it's quite firmed up. So if you are interested in this work, put it in your calendars. December 12th, we're more than likely have this first workshop in Marlborough. And then we're working very, at this point, to establish the other dates, which is, so workshop 1 is understanding, it's going to be a lot of content and understanding integrated systemic support services and approaches. Then in January, we'll have a virtual convening and introducing the self-assessment in what is the process to go through that. February, we will have a second workshop, and we will go deeper into the self-assessment, so some more practical work. March, we'll have another virtual convening to kick off the implementation planning. In April, we will do refine plan and start establishing some outcomes under workshop number 3. In terms of district teams, from our working networks, really, who you send is incredibly important for this work. Being very strategic in who you're sending and who's going to be leading the work matters incredibly. So we're hoping that you're all sending, or we're asking that we all send you between 3 or 4 schools, again, serving grades 3 through 8. And that your team composition is the following: that you have one district leader with decision-making authority on student support work, so someone that is actually working at the district level. And then that each school sends at least 3 team members that include administrator with decision-making authority, like principal or assistant principal, general educator, and then definitely a student support-related staff, so like a school counselor. Then you may also want to include a member around, additional staff around student support, or classroom teachers, or special education, English language staff. So community partner, a family representative would be a fantastic idea too. So, be very strategic on how you put together your team. So now I'm going to give it to, again, questions. We can address them now or later. Please put them on the chat box. And then I'm going to turn it to Boston College and Pat to introduce us into like the core work of this project.
Good morning. This is Pat DiNatale. I'm representing the Center for Optimized Student Support here at Boston College and have worked for many years in the Boston Public Schools, as Rebecca stated, trying to think about systematizing student support across schools to address the varying opportunities and strengths and needs that students have in this whole field of optimized student support. We're thrilled to be joining Desi, who we've worked with for a number of years, and the Rennie Center in this strong partnership, and welcome all of you to help you think about how student support is optimized in your own school district. And as Juanita said, the first session will be considerably focused on current theory of the science of student support and theory and practice of implementation of integrated student support. But one thing I think I've learned over the years working inside Boston and working with school districts on the City Connects program here at Boston College is that each one of you in your districts recognize the need for student support and have student support processes and functions inside your school. So one of the things we'd like to work with you on is this self-assessment against the systemic student support indicators that each one of your districts will identify and want to work forward in bringing some structure to inside your schools. So the self-assessment really is an examination of the existing conditions and structures that you already have inside your school and how to build them into a holistic student support program. So in taking this self-assessment, there'll be a section for you to work with your teams in identifying the common in and out of school barriers to learning that you currently face, and then taking a real strong look at the strengths and the assets of your students, your families, and your school district, because each one of you represents a school district and a set of students and families who have great strengths. And we know from developmental science that we need to build on strengths and in addition to addressing needs. So we want to take a close look at those strengths and assets. We want to take a look in the self-assessment of what your leadership represents and what your teams are already in place inside your schools. You know, many of you have instructional leadership teams, you have student support teams, you have a variety of teams that are working on culture and climate. And how does this all come together to support students and families? We want to take a look at, we'll have you take a look at what student information you already collect. And we know that you probably collect a lot of academic information about your students, but many of you also perhaps collect a lot of student support information about your students. And we want to look at that systemically in the self-assessment. We want to look at existing student support resources, processes, and practices that are already existing inside your school, because it's those resources, processes, and practices that you'll be looking at to build upon as this workshop progresses. And finally, we'd like to have this self-assessment tool help you to take a look at the existing partnerships that you already have with both community agencies and institutions that support your school, that support your families, and support your students. As a result of the self-assessment, we'd like to work with you on building an action plan that both looks at your strengths and looks at areas that you'd like to have for development. And as a result of these workshops and self-assessment tools, come up with a plan that's district-based for your school district, that is concrete, that is feasible and targeted in scope, We'd like to work with you on establishing specific measurable outcomes of this plan so that you'll know how it's working, if it's working, and how you'd like to tweak it as you move forward. We'd like to work with you on reflecting on variations, both inside your schools and within the district, because while we know that district policies are critically important, each school has its own culture and climate and its own personality, I call it, in how you implement that's school-based. And where appropriate, as Juanita described, I believe it's going to be critically important for any student support plan to be integrated into either your whole school improvement plan that you most likely have in place. How does it fit into any other plans that you have in place? For example, if you're working with the Safe and Supportive School program, you may have a Safe and Supportive School plan, but we know that inside schools, you have many plans you're working on. How do they all come together and align so that it's a holistic approach to student development? And we're thinking that, again, building on what Juanita said, that we'll have 3 full-day in-person workshops with each one of your teams, your team members, 2 web sessions. We will have time outside of the workshops to be consultants to you as you move forward in building your optimized student support program. We will complete the process of self-assessment with you against the indicators of integrated student support. We'll help develop and refine the implementation plan that you're working on, and think about potential funding and interest in participating in the second year of having those plans go to full implementation, and then a brief pre and post survey.
Thank you so much, Pat, for that very detailed view of what all of this work looks like. And so exciting to have you all with all your knowledge and your decades of experience, leading the content of the work. In terms, now going with the application requirements, we hope this is not a big lift. We're really hoping only no more than 5 pages. You identify the lead applicant from the district. So even though you're going to have all these teams, all these different school teams, we want to make sure that we have someone that we can communicate directly and is leading the work. Describing a little bit about your district context and your background, the need for this work. How does your student population look like? What have been some of the efforts you've put together around this integrated student supports? Identify your 3 to 4 schools, and again 2 if you're a small district and need to just focus on 2 schools. Your S3 Academy team members. Very important to articulate your goals for participating in the S3 Academy. Like we're working now on a curriculum and how we're going to do these workshops and the support that we're providing, but you will know that our work is much better if we know what you expect to accomplish, and we can customize it for that, and that you truly feel that the content and the support that we're given is answering some of your needs, and that is truly helping you accomplish what you consider to be your goals. As I mentioned, you describe your current upcoming efforts to improve student support, and some assurance from your superintendent. Want to make sure that if this is truly going to be integrated with all the work that you do internally, that is getting supported by your chief leader. Then you have some more detailed criteria and guidance in your application. So starting off with a couple of questions we've already received. I know just right now we received that whether the webinar is going to be available, and yes, the slides for sure. We are making sure that the recording came out well. So definitely the slides will be available. We hope that also all the recording and our magnificent voices. I'm just laughing there because nobody likes their own voice. But points of clarification, we want to make sure that the work is aligned and complementary with the Safe and Supportive Schools framework and initiatives. Again, I'm just going to read, particularly for schools that have identified access to service as an area of need. But all the schools meeting eligibility criteria are welcome to apply, even if you haven't received or are not involved in the Safe and Supportive Schools grant. Then you do not, by participating in this work, doesn't mean that you're signing up to partner with City Connects. This is a standalone work, and we're benefiting from all the experience and content from City Connects, but one doesn't tell the other. So, and then you do not need to buy any or subscribe to any specific curriculum or student support service model. We will go through different ways to approach the work, and you'll make your own determinations about all of these curriculums or student support service models. But right now, this is truly, again, I repeat, a standalone offering, which we hope that you can take advantage without having any other tied initiatives to it, or products tied to it. We do hope that this work leads into year 2, and we can be supporting implementation, but this is still, so there's, think about that there's a great possibility, but not yet a certainty. I'm going to see what other, if any, questions. No additional questions.
This is Becca chiming in for a moment. I just wanted to reiterate that while we can't 100% definitively say that there'll be a year 2 of implementation support, that is fully the plan. So I think that is something that you could generally count on happening. Great. Are there any other questions? And if you'd rather just vocalize your question, you're welcome to unmute yourself too to do that. So we did get a question about how many districts will be considered for inclusion. Based on the budget, we're shooting to include 8 to 10 districts. So that is the goal. Next question is, if we are implementing City Connects at 24 schools, how would this be different for our district? I don't know, Pat, would it make sense for you to take this question?
Pat might be unmuted.
Okay, if you're already implementing the City Connects program in 24 of your schools, the difference may be to look at some of the schools who are not implementing the model, that full implementation of the model, and see if some of the schools are interested in looking at a more generalized integrated student support program that they might create together as a school community.
Maybe we'll just give one more minute in case anyone has a last minute burning question. Oh, we just got a new one. Urban and suburban districts will be considered, ? Are you targeting schools or districts with DESI data on safety? So all districts will definitely be considered. There will be priority consideration, however, for districts that are serving schools that were recently through the new, the new accountability system, schools that were identified as needing targeted, focused, or broad comprehensive support. However, just because a school or district falls in that category, it doesn't not necessarily mean that they'll get selected, nor is it true on the converse that if you don't have schools that fall within that category that you won't be selected, but it's a general guideline. And we will definitely be looking, there's a question about like, why is this something that you are looking to do right now? And what types of outcomes are you hoping to obtain through the work? And so if you have data that is concerning regarding safety or discipline, that's something certainly that we'll take into consideration, but we're not using a specific threshold around safety data in terms of selection. Good questions. Also, if I've answered one of your questions, but I didn't answer it fully enough or I misunderstood any part of it, please feel free to chime in again or speak up. And another option is at the end of this PowerPoint deck, you'll see my information, and you're welcome to reach out to us if you don't feel comfortable reaching out in this forum, or you realize that you have a question after the fact. Please feel free to reach out at any time, and we're happy to address that. Okay, so the follow-up question came in: Is this the first year of the offering? Yes, it is. This is our pilot year in doing this work, and we're really excited about it. But as we've done with other academies, oftentimes they've come out of a particular earmark in the budget or a particular grant, but if it winds up being something that districts find really useful, we've found ways to incorporate it into our operating budget. So hopefully that would be the case for this as well. Great. Well, if there are no other questions, I want to just turn it over to BC and Rennie just in case either organization had anything they wanted to add this morning.
I think from Boston College's perspective, I again say how much we welcome this opportunity to work with Becca again in this area of integrated student support, and to have Rennie as a partner with so much experience in the area of policy and district work. And the districts who are on the webinar this morning are districts we'd love to have an opportunity to get to know and team up with you to think about integrated student support within your district that's unique to your district plans.
Yeah, just as I echo Pat's words, and this is exciting. You know, I saw some of the names of folks in the webinar and some familiar names, and I look forward to hopefully working together and continue to learn ourselves as the Rennie Center. A lot of the work that we do on, we have the two sides, implementation and research, and they truly fit each other. You know, a lot of what we learn around implementation goes to feed our research and need for more research, and the other way around. You know, we really think about what does it take to make all of this identified policy and best practices work. So this is a great opportunity for us to be part of this, to deliver some of our expertise, and more than anything to learn what's working and not working, and how can we continue to customize it in this spirit of continuous improvement. So, and you know, Becca's been great to work with us thus far, and I am excited for the year to come.
Great, thanks, Juanita. I'll try to keep being okay to work with. So just one last note. You know, a lot of times we've been working with districts multi-years on this topic, and one phrase we often use is that a lot of communities are somewhat resource rich but systems poor, and particularly when we're talking about out of school factors or the social emotional health related needs that students have, a lot of times the systems aren't in place to really proactively identify and address them before they manifest into a crisis. And I'm sure many of you have had the experience where if a student really has a pressing need that isn't exclusively academic, sometimes it doesn't really get supported until it's turned into this, crisis mode. And so we're really excited to, work with Rennie in BC and hopefully many of you on figuring out how do we codify and concretize our system so that we can really address students' needs proactively and in an effective way, and capitalize on all of the expertise and resources that are in our communities to do that more effectively. So thank you so much for your time this morning. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thanks.